What's up again, class? It's option 1. In our last lesson, we audited My Night Job. We covered the basics of the game and what I thought about it. It's kind of interesting that I played My Night Job this week because it wasn't long after that I saw this YouTube video from Now You See It entitled, What Makes a Movie Scary? In a lot of ways, My Night Job tries to parody, or at least make reference to several horror movies, from Jaws to Night of the Living Dead. Horror movies in general are part of our popular culture, as far as games and in television, movies, comics. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually a very large fan of horror movies myself, but I tend to like certain veins of horror. Going off the video, which I recommend you check out from Now You See It, the narrator compares two scenes, discusses why each scene, both scenes which are written exactly the same, why one is potentially more scary than another. I think it kind of misses the point. Horror is not what people expect. Horror, in my opinion, can be boiled down to something far more simplistic but far more complex than traditional definitions. Here we have the straight-up Google definition of horror: an intense feeling of shock, fear, disgust, or a bad or mischievous person, especially as a child. Obviously, the second is using it like an adjective describing something, so the first is an intense feeling of fear, shock, or disgust. Most people associate horror film with the base definition of horror. A horror movie is simply a movie that disgusts or frightens you. In gaming nowadays, we have a lot of games that are synonymous with jump scares. Things like Five Nights at Freddy's. That if a game shocks me, shows me violent or disturbing imagery very quickly, that's associated with horror. Talking about film specifically, I looked up horror film at Wiki, and it says, horror is a film genre seeking to elicit a negative emotional reaction from viewers by playing on the audience's primal fears. The macabre and supernatural are frequent themes and may overlap with the fantasy, supernatural fiction, and thriller genres. Horror films often deal with viewers' nightmares, fears, revulsions, and terror of the unknown. While that's true essentially, I feel that not a lot of people truly understand what horror actually is. And I'm not talking about horror as in ghosts, goblins, scary, bloody, violent, gory slasher. I'm talking about true horror. And I think most of my argument deals with the video from Now You See It, because the video in question talks about why one scene is theoretically more scary than another scene. And that got me thinking. Psychological horror, by nature, is not simply an assault on the reaction or the senses. It's not simply a scary event that causes you to think twice or to look back. True psychological horror is something that creates tension, deep feelings of fear and true disgust. The best way to explain what I mean is to think about the most primal fear any of us in this modern world may have, or may have had at some point in their life: fear of the dark. What is it about darkness that scared us as children? The fear that there could be something there we can't see. I think this is the essence of true horror itself. Fear comes from the unknown, situations that we can't see or understand. In my definition, true horror is subversion. It's the opposite of the natural effect. Subversion basically means when you turn something on its head in a sneaky way. I think true horror stems from the nature of what's normal becoming unexpected. For example, fearing someone's death. The normal expected result is that someone you love is going to live through the day and you'll be able to see them again. It's unexpected should they die. True horror isn't a monster from outer space, but simply, what does the monster from out of space want? True horror isn't a serial killer coming up the stairs. It's, how much is it going to hurt when he catches me? True horror deals more with the spaces between action, the moments when you don't know what could happen, but you're forced to make a choice. Should I run? Should I hide? I think my most favorite horror films are examples of this sort of subversion. They're not horror films that are simply serial killer or alien or a monster or strange situation equals people's death. It's people being forced to deal with unbelievable, unforeseen, and extremely lethal situations. Take one of my favorite horror movies, John Carpenter's The Thing. In John Carpenter's The Thing, the movie establishes right from the beginning that the dog being seen in the first chase is an alien. It's established almost moments into the film that this is an alien that's going to kill everybody in the installation. That's not what's scary. What's scary about The Thing is that anybody could be the alien.
Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it.
What I think is personally one of the most amazing scenes of horror film ever, when Kurt Russell is testing each person's blood and the person you don't expect to be the alien turns out to be the alien. Another one of my favorite horror movies, the 1980s Fright Night. Almost immediately, it's established that the young boy's next door neighbor is a vampire. The story isn't simply, oh my god, a vampire living next door. It's, oh my god, there's a vampire living next door. What do I do? There's so much more fear and true excitement, true thrill, true shock and disgust and horror that plays with your mind instead of simply makes you jump. My Night Job, in a way, is kind of a subversion of a normal situation. While the game itself doesn't exactly have a lore, it's implied by the title and the opening scenes that you are a simple run-of-the-mill guy who's been enlisted in taking care of a haunted, zombie-infested mansion because you need the money, because it's your night job. But the game subverts even the idea of it being scary to say, well, you know, they're just zombies. Grab a plant, start knocking them down. Really, monsters aren't that scary as long as you're smart enough to use your environment, and that the real horror of My Night Job is not actually the monsters, it's the fact that you might fail and the house you're supposed to protect might get destroyed in the process. What are some of your favorite horror films and why? There's a lot more I'd like to talk about, and some of my most recent favorite horror movies are what I would call meta horror movies like You're Next or Cabin in the Woods that don't seek to subvert normal everyday situations but seek to subvert the horror genre itself. But let me know what you think is scary. Why do you think it's scary? What are some of your favorite games that are scary? And I think this is kind of an interesting thing because we don't often see games these days that are truly horrifying. The last time I played a game I was truly scared would have been Penumbra. I was going to have to deal with these creatures and I couldn't attack them. That actually scared me. This is also interesting because there's been a lot of talk lately about Resident Evil. Of course, most of you know I was big into Umbrella Corps for a short time, and even Resident Evil 7 is attempting to take the genre back to its survival horror roots. What is horror? Is it the knowledge that there's a zombie around the corner that could kill me? Or is it the knowledge I don't know what's around the corner and I don't know how it could kill me? That's it for today. Small discussion. I recommend you check out the video by Now You See It. Again, I don't agree with its points, but I still feel that it's a good video. We've touched on a topic today we'll talk about for our next class, but that's it. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you soon.